I'm delighted to be here today with Carl Trueman, Aimee Byrd, Todd Pruitt. Individually, they are minor Christian celebrities. Together, they are the Mortification of Spin podcast and blog as well. And so we're delighted to have them today to talk about the podcast, to talk about the blog, to talk about their individual ministries and their ministry together. Welcome, Mortification of Spin crew.
Thank you. It's interesting, Jonathan, that you mentioned celebrity, because of the three here, I'm the least celebrity.
How is that so?
Well, because I don't have nearly the followers on Twitter that you have. I have no books to my credit. You're coming out with your second. Of course, Trueman has written like 50 books, and he travels literally all over the world. Don't even interrupt me.
I have no followers on Twitter.
Oh, well, but you write books, you travel all over the you travel all over the world. When you and I are someplace, the only person who's at risk of being recognized is you.
Well, you have the mega church.
It's not a mega church. And so we at Mortification of Spin thought that it would be proper if we came up with something that reflected Carl Trueman's celebrity status. And so this is a t-shirt. It says Trueman is my homeboy, with a picture of an icon of Carl right there.
With
and then of course Mortification of Spin on the back. But yeah, it has way more hair than he actually has. And so anyway, there's that t-shirt. And Jonathan, it appears that they made this one in the child size. But Alicia, I'm going to give this back to you, and then maybe you can give Jonathan one in an adult size one of these days.
That's great. I mean, that's my wife's Christmas present right there. Trueman is my homeboy.
No.
She will love you forever.
I just think we need to treat Carl with the respect that his status has earned.
Absolutely.
Anyway.
Well, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I think you're the first group of people I've interviewed, or individual I've interviewed, who's given me a gift. So, I mean, there it is. You've gone right to the top of the list. And what a gift. Exactly, exactly. All right, so let's talk about this podcast. Carl, I want to start with you. How did this whole thing begin? What's the genesis of Mortification of Spin? You were present at the beginning.
I was. Well, you remember we're both involved in the Alliance of Confessing Evangelicals. You remember a couple of years ago, all of the really important people left the Alliance, and we were pretty much the only people left. And Bob Brady at the time asked me, okay, what would you like to do for us? And I said, I'd like to do a podcast, but I'll only do it with my friend Todd Pruitt, who was at that time pastor of Church of the Saviour. So Bob said, sure. We got together. It was a low-budget operation. It was essentially me and Todd in a room at Church of the Saviour. Mike Harris, I think, was there for the original recording with his computer. So it was 3 guys, 1 computer, and 2 microphones.
Bubblegum and paper clips.
I remember those early days. I remember coming in, and we had to switch mics back and forth. When you'd ask a question, you'd slide the mic over.
That's right.
Those were good days. I thought it was destined for failure, but here we are.
Well, the first few we recorded were so bad, we never actually aired them.
That's right.
Really?
They are in the
It was
vault
bad.
of the Alliance.
It was not good.
It was terrible. They were terrible. But we were going for, we went for a few months, and then we interviewed Aimee. She'd published her book, The Housewife Theologian. We knew she was from West Virginia, and we saw great comic potential. So we had Aimee on, and she was introduced with the dueling banjos theme from the great movie Deliverance. And Aimee was such a good sport, took it all on the chin. We thought it would be fun to have her on the podcast permanently.
They needed someone they could make fun of.
We needed a foil for our sarcasm, as well as somebody to bring out the more tender side, because what we came to find out was that just Carl and I were so deeply offensive to so many people that we had to have something to soften that a little bit.
That's a very narrow demographic.
Absolutely.
And Aimee has saved the podcast.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Okay. So, having established that, Todd, what are some of the major concerns? Tell me about some of the big sort of overriding themes that you feel like you come back to over and over again as you reflect.
I mean, we certainly deal with the importance and the nature of the local church a lot. The local church being still God's chosen means to declare His word, to bring disciples into the body. You know, it's the church, which is the locus of God's glory and His work in the world. And so we return to themes connected to the church time and time again. We've also dealt a lot with issues of contemporary evangelicalism, like the overwhelming power of sentimentality, which gives birth to such things as Jesus calling, and just the phenomena surrounding the weaknesses of a lot of contemporary evangelicalism, and trying to challenge that with a more robust faith. Mm-hmm. So those are a couple things that pop into my mind, first of all.
Aimee, I'm curious, what kind of feedback have you gotten from your involvement here with these guys? Any overriding themes that people come to you with over and over again?
Any concerns that people have come to you with?
Yeah.
Many people are probably envious of it.
Oh, yeah. So many people wish I had my job. Though people do ask me sometimes, like, what was I thinking? Or how in the heck did I get into this? Mm-hmm. Which is what I think pretty much before recording every time. But
what was I thinking as soon as you see Carl and I walk into the room?
How did I get into this? But I have had a lot of people tell me that they're very appreciative, especially men, that there's now a woman on because now their wives can listen with them, and then they talk about it afterwards. And at the women's retreats that I do, I've had a lot of appreciation for it. I think the major theme is in our title, is that we identify the spin that's going on in the evangelical culture, and we are trying to cut through that and get other people thinking about that. And so I've been really happy with that kind of feedback.
Now, I know a lot of times you guys devote episodes to interviewing guests and everything, so I'm not asking you to step on anyone's toes, but I am curious, what are some episodes, no, this is positive, what are some episodes that stick out as having maybe been really significant, either as you walked away from them or as you received responses from listeners? Because I think that's one of the really interesting things, is you get feedback.
I bet you were going to say the same one.
We did one with Diane Langberg on domestic abuse and sexual abuse of children in the church and in the home. And that was a very powerful one. And I think it was also a very instructive one for us because Dr. Langberg is very experienced in this area. And some of the information, some of the anecdotes, some of the statements she made changed the way I personally think about addressing these issues within the church.
So it changed even what you're doing in pastoral ministry, how you view what you're doing. Same, Todd?
Absolutely. Yeah, it had a big impact. I mean, when we were recording that, Diane was on the phone with us. We were sitting in a room together, and we kept shooting looks at each other because we knew that we were getting stuff from her that was going to be very helpful. Yeah. Not only for us in our ministry, but also people who were looking. But yeah, I'm approaching some things a little differently than I did prior to that interview.
Mm-hmm. And you got a lot of feedback from that interview as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, being a woman, I would like to say that I really appreciate some of the women's issues that we've talked about on the show, from abuse, even emotional abuse, and then we did one on the patriarchy movement. And a lot of these things, I don't think the church is aware of, because these women are quiet a lot of the time. And so I think it helped give them a voice and helped educate even some elders and pastors that it's out there, and I've gotten some really good feedback on that. I'm really proud to be a part of that, actually.
So is that the one that stands out the most for you too?
Diane's definitely stood out to us because just what she was saying and teaching to us, we were learners in that interview, and we were very eager to share that one with the churches.
Yeah, there were a few things that she said that caused me to think a little bit differently afterwards. There's a couple questions I might have answered differently before that interview than I would have afterwards. And just dealing with how you respond to an accusation, some of the presuppositions bring into it. So she was real helpful in that way. And we got a lot of feedback on that. What would be another one that would pop into mind? I'm trying to think. Is that the only good one we've done? I mean, I've gotten lots of feedback on just on some of the things we've talked about as far as the whole evangelical subculture and some of the popular movements within evangelicalism. I've gotten feedback on some of those kinds of things, just because people see it so much in their churches and are concerned by some of the things.
Happy to have someone addressing those issues.
I think one of the advantages we have is because the Alliance is comparatively small and we're not in the game of filling football stadiums, we don't have to worry about maintaining a huge coalition behind us, essentially, which always blunts your ability to speak critically to situations. So we've been able to speak with more forthrightness on some of the pressing issues within evangelicalism itself than other organizations that are, well, too heavily invested in many ways in some of the things that are going on that need to be called out, but nobody will call them out because the financial price, I think, for certain organizations would be too great. So we enjoy the freedom of being, we are completely ignored by and large by the important people out there, but we're also aware that they listen to our stuff because every now and then you'll see an implicit response to what we've done. So we enjoy the freedom of, I suppose, of being a kind of rebel alliance, if you like, in the face of the larger evangelical establishment.
Yeah, there's a certain freedom in being in playing in the minor leagues.
Yeah,
that
it's not to take ourselves too seriously, too.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very aware of the fact that we don't have a big brand to protect, and so it's okay if we goof up and we can admit that and that kind of thing. Again, we're not protecting a massive brand. I don't want that responsibility.
Now, Todd, you and Carl obviously are also working pastors, so why don't we kind of go down the line here and you can tell the viewers what it is you do besides this podcast that you do on the side.
Yeah, my daily work is being a pastor of a local church, which I love. I serve a PCA church in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia, in Harrisonburg, Virginia. It's a university town. And my daily work is like any other local pastor. I spend time interacting with church staff, with members of the session, and every single day brings some sort of an interaction or a conversation with a member of my congregation about anything from a theological question to I just found out I'm dying this week, that sort of thing. And so all the things that go along with that as you're each day preparing to preach every Lord's Day and teach a Sunday school class. And I have a wife and 3 kids. I also try to spend 5 or 10 minutes with each week. And so, it's just the daily work that any typical pastor does. It's what the Lord's called me to. It's what I love to do.
I am a housewife theologian. I really am. I take the preached word seriously, God's word seriously, and then try to live my life according to it. And I think that just thinking about how that goes together has led to my writing. But I'm a mom. I've got a sophomore in high school, a 7th grader, and a 4th grader. So my job on a daily basis involves a lot of driving and sandwich making and
Did you fetch the coffee?
refereeing.
Well, you never get us a sandwich or coffee or anything like
Never.
That was part of the deal with you
That's
coming
not.
on.
But I have made you some chocolate chip cookies.
That's true.
That's
true. It's a
Good
thing.
cookies, too.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Carl?
Yeah, I teach church history at Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, preparing men for ministry and men and women for leadership roles within the church. And I'm also pastor of a local Orthodox Presbyterian congregation in Ambler, which is a small town just outside Philadelphia, a congregation of about 150 to 160 people. So I preach there.
Which is big for an OPC church.
It's huge for an OPC church. I preach there 3 Sundays out of 4. I'm married, have 2 sons, both college age. So my wife and I are enjoying the peace and quiet of our sons being away at college.
Now, how do you guys decide on topics to discuss or people to interview? How does that whole process work? Is
Just
it
comes to
as
us.
haphazard as it appears
They
to be?
come to
Or
us.
is it
It is every bit as haphazard as it sounds like when you're actually listening to one of the podcasts. We
Amateur.
do when I've heard, it sounds like you all just kind of fly by the seat of your pants, and well, that's not rehearsed. We do.
We are genuinely amateur. So we don't just study to be amateur.
We don't just pretend.
That's right. If it were not for Aaron, who does the recording and the technical post-production, that kind of thing, it would be absolutely awful.
The whole MOS team, really, they make us look good because...
We'll think about a topic beforehand, but we actually, I mean, I would say the amount of prep we do before a recording is maybe 4 or 5 minutes.
We do prep?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We will find ourselves sitting there. You know, I never really thought about this until it dawned on me that must have, you know, I would love to know how Bob Brady and
What about me when you invited me to come on?
When we invited...
So what is our topic?
Yeah, whatever.
We're going to do like 4 recordings the first time we got together.
But if I can jump in, sometimes you talk to authors, and so presumably you've had some contact with the book, whether you've read it all the way through, or at least just interested in it.
We'll read books.
So there's
before.
that kind of stuff, right?
We'll pre-read books for the author interviews, for sure.
Or just read one of the reviews on Amazon, and then say you read it.
Right. Sort of a
We just randomly phone people up and say, do you want to do a podcast? You're on.
Yeah, so it is, I mean, the point is that we actually don't put in a ton of time on the, should I be saying this? We don't put a ton of time in on the podcast.
Well, it's a casual conversation.
Exactly, and one of the things that I know Bob Brady had in mind with the podcast was he wasn't looking to try to redo, for instance, the wonderful work that White Horse Inn does. You know, White Horse Inn has a thing that I wouldn't even dream of trying to compete with. Ours is a completely different sort of thing. It's intentionally casual, intentionally unscripted.
That did drive me nuts, because the first time we got together to do a batch of recordings, I didn't even know what all the topics were going to be, and I'm not really, I'm thinking, I'm talking to 2 pastors, professor, author, Carl Trueman, crazy guy.
Intimidating.
I was a little
like,
what am I supposed to, I don't even know what we're talking. That was kind of crazy.
You're meant to be the kind of the Rexella Van Impe to the 2 Jacks.
Just look at us and go, that's right.
You're so intelligent.
So now, for people who are just charmed by this interaction, I'm wondering where would they go to actually listen to this podcast?
TGC.org. No. Mortificationofspin.org.
Or you could subscribe on iTunes,
Thank you.
which is, I think, the preferred.
That's
but
the best
we
way to
write
do
on
it.
the Mortification of Spin about some of the podcasts.
But I'm sure the best way to listen is just go to the iTunes store and listen to the podcast.
But we've now gotten a new website where we do, the 3 of us blog on mortificationofspin.org.
And you were already a blogger. Prior to that, you were already a blogger. Carl
was
on
already a
Ref21.
blogger.
Yep. So that's just kind of the combined efforts of the 3 of you.
Right.
And then the podcast comes up, mortificationofspin.org.
And you can find all of Carl's vanity projects there too. Mugs and T-shirts, for instance.
Yeah. Right. If you want a T-shirt
Carl,
like what you saw.
Photos, fountain pens.
Right.
That's good.
Balloons.
That's good. That's good. Well, on that sublime note, we'll have to call it a day. But thank you very much for coming.
Jonathan.
Thanks very much for having us,
Thank
John.
you.
Absolutely.